She was 22, blonde, and by every account strikingly pretty. She was also the most feared woman in 2 death camps, carried a silver-handled whip, a loaded pistol, and sent thousands to the gas. In 1945, a British military court tried her for crimes so grim the press needed a new headline. The Beautiful Beast of Auschwitz had to die. By Christmas that year, she would be the youngest woman hanged under British law in the entire 20th century. Stay till the end, and you will hear exactly what she said on the gallows, how the survivors finally got their answers, and why historians still argue over the photographs of her smile. Irma Grese was born on October 7, 1923, in the tiny, unassuming village of Reich, nestled within the Mecklenburg region of Germany. She was the second daughter in a family of 5 children, raised by an austere dairy farmer. Her childhood, by all accounts, should have been rooted in the simple, quiet rhythms of country life, filled with farm chores and local festivals. But beneath this veneer of rural normalcy, the Great Depression struck German agriculture with the force of a hammer blow, forcing the Grese family to scrape by with a grim determination. Neighbors remembered her father as a cold, distant figure, her mother as sickly and withdrawn, and the children themselves as desperate, yearning to escape the mud-boot poverty that defined their existence. When Adolf Hitler seized power in 1933, Irma was a mere 9 years old. Germany's classrooms, radios, and public spaces rapidly became saturated with the insidious propaganda of the Nazi regime. Schools began to drill her in race theory, shaping young minds with a twisted ideology. For many, the League of German Girls offered a uniform, a badge, and the intoxicating first taste of belonging, a sense of purpose and identity in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. Irma, like many, was drawn to this promise. She left school at 15, her academic struggles compounded by a deep-seated desire to break free from her circumstances. In a friend's notebook, she scribbled a single, poignant dream: "I will amount to something." This quiet ambition, this fierce yearning for significance, would tragically find its distorted fulfillment in the years to come. Then, in 1941, an opportunity arose, cloaked in the deceptive allure of adventure and stability. The SS announced openings for female auxiliaries. The pay was double what she earned, the meals were hot and plentiful, and the promise of escaping her provincial life for something grander, something more significant, proved irresistible. Irma volunteered the very next morning, stepping onto a path that would lead her far from the dairy farm, but into a darkness she could scarcely comprehend. Her journey into this new, terrifying world began at Ravensbrück, the notorious women's concentration camp located just an hour north of Berlin. It was here, in this chilling crucible, that Irma Grese underwent her brutal training. 6 weeks of relentless drill taught her not only to click her heels and bark orders, but, more disturbingly, to view prisoners not as human beings, but as mere enemy cargo, dehumanized objects to be managed and controlled. She quickly assimilated the unofficial perks of her new role: extra leave awarded for acts of exceptional harshness, and precious cigarettes distributed for every inmate punished. This environment systematically eroded any lingering vestiges of compassion, replacing it with a cold, calculated indifference. At the tender age of 18, Irma was posted to Auschwitz-Birkenau, a name that would become synonymous with industrial-scale murder. This sprawling complex, a town-sized factory of death, offered ample opportunity for her nascent sadism to flourish. The senior overseers, hardened by years in the SS system, quickly took notice of the leggy recruit's burgeoning fanaticism. Her zeal, her unwavering adherence to the brutal ideology, and her willingness to inflict pain without hesitation distinguished her. Within months, Irma earned the black triangle of a regular, a mark of her established authority, and carried a whip braided meticulously from leftover saddlery. This wasn't merely a tool for control, it became an extension of her will, a symbol of her power. Survivors would later recount with chilling clarity how she would practice snapping it against fence posts, honing her technique until the tip, they swore, could take an eye out at 5 paces. Ravensbrück had been her training ground, but Auschwitz would be her stage, where her cruelty would reach its full, horrifying expression. Auschwitz in 1943 was a continent of barbed wire, a landscape of unimaginable suffering where 12,000 female prisoners were crammed into wooden barracks originally built for just 400. This was the grim reality of Irma Grese's domain. Her beat was the BIA section, a particularly harrowing area that served as both the women's quarantine and a so-called family camp, a cynical euphemism for a place where families were held briefly before their inevitable extermination. She patrolled these desolate grounds in polished boots, her uniform immaculate, often adorned with a stark white scarf and bright lipstick, a grotesque splash of color that looked utterly obscene beside the grey, emaciated faces of the starving prisoners. It was here that prisoners, with grim irony, nicknamed her the Beautiful Beast. They called her this not for any hidden kindness, but because she would often laugh, a high, chilling sound, while she was beating them. Witness after witness, their voices trembling with the weight of memory, would recount the same horrifying scene. Roll call at 4 in the morning, the ground brittle with frost, Grese striding imperiously between the rows of shivering women, her eyes scanning, searching. She would pick out the weakest, the most vulnerable, and order them to strip naked in the biting cold. Then, with a chilling detachment, she would count out 25 lashes, often humming a popular tune as she administered the brutal punishment. If a woman collapsed under the blows, Grese would step on her fingers with the heel of her jackboot, pressing down until the bones cracked, the sound echoing in the silent terror of the morning. And then, with an almost bureaucratic efficiency, she would sign the transport list, condemning these broken women to the gas chamber. Her handwriting, historians note, still exists in the Auschwitz archive. Neat, looping script in green ink, a chilling testament to her direct complicity in mass murder. This was her kingdom, and she ruled it with an iron fist, her beauty a perverse mask for the abyss within. Irma Grese's tools of terror were infamous, etched into the nightmares of countless survivors. Her whip, a meticulously crafted instrument of pain, featured a plaited stock and a short, lethal lash. She possessed a terrifying dexterity with it, able to flick it with such precision that the tip could cut a cheek like a razor, leaving permanent scars as a testament to her cruelty. Her pistol, a 7.65mm Walther, was worn low on her belt, its barrel deliberately filed down to prevent snagging, a small detail that spoke volumes about her readiness for immediate violence. But perhaps most chilling were her 2 German Shepherd attack dogs, Bodo and Fritz. These animals were deliberately half-starved, kept on a razor's edge of hunger and aggression, trained to attack on her single, sharp command. Survivors testified with harrowing detail how Grese would set these dogs on pregnant women, not out of any perceived infraction, but purely for sport. She would time, with perverse fascination, how long the victim could shield her belly, turning human suffering into a grotesque spectacle. One particularly brutal incident, meticulously recorded in the trial transcript, involved a Hungarian violinist. Grese forced the musician to play Strauss, a classical melody rendered grotesque, while prisoners were made to run in circles around her. Every time the music slowed, Grese would whip the musician across her fingers, ensuring the frantic pace continued. When the piece finally ended, a macabre performance concluded. Grese applauded, a chilling gesture of appreciation for the torment she had orchestrated. Then, without a flicker of emotion, she shot the woman in the knee. The crippled girl, her music silenced, was sent to the gas chamber that very same afternoon. These instruments, these animals, were not merely extensions of her power. They were extensions of her depraved will, wielded with a cold, calculated sadism that defies comprehension. January 1945. The distant rumble of Soviet guns rattled the windows of Auschwitz, a sound that signaled the beginning of the end for the Nazi death machine. As the Red Army advanced relentlessly, Auschwitz was evacuated, its horrific operations hastily dismantled. Irma Grese, still very much a part of this collapsing system, marched out with 2,000 women prisoners, forced onto a brutal death march towards railheads in the snow. The conditions were unspeakable. Anyone who stumbled, anyone who faltered from exhaustion or starvation was summarily shot. Her whip and dogs remained at her side, pushing the exhausted prisoners toward an unknown, terrifying fate. From Auschwitz, she was shunted first to Ravensbrück, the camp where her journey into cruelty had begun, and then, as the Reich crumbled further, to the typhus-rotted hell of Bergen-Belsen. Here, amidst the apocalyptic chaos, Grese was inexplicably promoted to Rapportführerin, a position second only to the commandant. Conditions at Belsen were so utterly chaotic, so far beyond any semblance of order, that she traded her whip for a riding crop. A fellow guard, with a chilling attempt at gallows humor, reportedly joked it was easier to clean brains off leather than braided cord. The end finally came on April 15, 1945. British tanks rolled through the gates of Bergen-Belsen, liberating a camp that had become a living monument to human suffering. Grese was still there, wandering amidst piles of the dead, her uniform disturbingly still clean and pressed. A young Tommy private disarmed her. She clicked her heels, a final defiant gesture, and demanded respectful treatment as a prisoner of war. The private, confronted with the unfathomable horror of Belsen, could only laugh, a bitter, hollow sound in the face of such monstrous arrogance. Liberation had arrived, but for Irma Grese, it marked the beginning of her reckoning. The solemnity of justice replaced the chaos of war in Lüneburg, where the town's old cavalry barracks were transformed into a courtroom. This was to be the stage for the Belsen trial, the first major war crimes hearing conducted under British military law. The charges against Irma Grese and her co-defendants were stark: complicity in the murder of unknown thousands at both Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. 45 SS men and women stood in the dock, a grim assembly representing the depths of Nazi depravity. Greece, at number 9, maintained her defiant posture. The world watched as survivors, their faces etched with unspeakable trauma, arrived wearing borrowed coats, the faded numbers of their imprisonment still faintly visible on their forearms. They were the living witnesses, their testimonies the bedrock of the prosecution. Greece, however, pleaded not guilty, attempting to portray herself as a benevolent figure who had tried to help prisoners. But the prosecution presented irrefutable evidence: her signed transport lists, meticulously documenting her role in sending thousands to their deaths. Confronted with these damning documents, Greece merely shrugged, her face devoid of emotion. Her defense, a chilling echo of countless others, was simple: "I only followed orders." This stark declaration, delivered with an almost casual indifference, only underscored the profound moral vacuum that defined her. The Belsen trial was a crucible of raw emotion and harrowing testimony, but a turning point arrived with the appearance of Helena Kepper. A Polish teenager who had entered Auschwitz at 16, Kepper stood on the witness stand and, with chilling clarity, described how Grese had kicked her friend Erna to death over a stolen potato. Under cross-examination, the defense counsel, in an attempt to discredit her, suggested that Kepper was exaggerating the horrors. The girl stood silent for a moment, then, with a profound act of courage, rolled up her sleeve, revealing the deep, ragged scars where Grese's whip had sliced into her shoulder. The courtroom went utterly quiet. Even the stenographers paused, their pens frozen as the undeniable truth of her suffering hung heavy in the air. Throughout the entirety of the trial, Irma Grese maintained an unnerving composure, a calculated defiance that perplexed and appalled observers. She consistently appeared in pressed blouses, her blonde hair meticulously pinned in a neat roll, almost as if she were attending a social event rather than a trial for mass murder. She flirted openly with her military police escort, a disturbing display of charm amidst the gravity of the proceedings. She giggled with her co-defendants, passing notes as if sharing schoolyard secrets, completely detached from the weight of the accusations. When the verdicts were finally delivered on November 17, 1945, a hush fell over the courtroom. Greece listened impassively as the president of the court pronounced her name, followed by the chilling sentence, "Guilty of crimes against humanity, death by hanging." She showed no emotion, no flicker of fear or remorse. Her only reaction was to calmly ask for a mirror, a grotesque request so she could fix her lipstick. Later, while awaiting her appeal, she spoke to a guard, her words devoid of regret. "I did my duty." This chilling statement encapsulates the profound moral inversion that had taken place within her, a complete embrace of an ideology that transformed unspeakable atrocities into mere acts of service. She remained, to her final moments of freedom, utterly unrepentant, a chilling testament to the power of indoctrination and the human capacity for evil. For nearly a decade, Irma Grese lay in an unmarked grave within the confines of Hamelin prison, her physical presence erased from the world she had so deeply scarred. Then, in 1954, as the prison prepared to close its doors, a decision was made regarding the remains of the executed war criminals. To prevent the creation of any potential neo-Nazi shrines, any sites that could glorify their horrific deeds, the bodies were exhumed and cremated. Their ashes were then scattered anonymously into the Weser River, a final, deliberate act to deny them any lasting monument or point of pilgrimage. No family came forward to claim them. Irma Grese, the beautiful beast, remained unmourned, her legacy one of unadulterated infamy. Yet, despite these efforts to erase her physical trace, her story refused burial. Newspapers, hungry for narratives that encapsulated the depths of wartime evil, recycled her mugshot: blonde hair, sharp cheekbones, and, most hauntingly, cold, piercing eyes that seemed to hold no empathy. Over the decades, she became a potent, disturbing symbol, debated and analyzed by scholars. She represented a chilling question. How could ordinary ambition curdle into industrial cruelty? How could a seemingly ordinary farm girl transform into one of history's most monstrous figures? Her case highlighted how gender stereotypes, ironically, often made her seem more monstrous than male killers who had orchestrated larger slaughters precisely because her brutality defied conventional expectations of femininity. Historians grapple with the paradox of her youth and her beauty, confronting the uncomfortable truth that evil does not always wear an obvious, grotesque face. The life and crimes of Irma Grese stand as a stark, indelible warning about what happens when ideology not only permits, but actively rewards sadism. It is a chilling testament to the dangers of a system where youth and superficial glamour can cloak the most brutal and dehumanizing acts. The survivors of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, those brave souls who bore witness against her, did not speak to Sartre vengeance. They spoke so that history could measure the true, agonizing depth of human failure, so that the world might never forget the consequences of such depravity.